Hello, 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 everyone. I am Dr. Amanda, and we are here live this Friday. If you're watching live, say hello in the chat. And if you're watching the replay, say hashtag replay. Of course, I always make sure my technology is working so we can see what's going on. Because today we're talking about something that is important, a question of a client asking about fasting when they have a diagnosis of diabetes. So first, I like to do a disclaimer, medical, that even though I am a medical doctor, Atkins Enlightenment Lifestyle Medicine, um, this is not medical advice. And I definitely advise you to talk with your own healthcare provider before implementing any changes, whether 2 or 4. But today is not medical advice. It's just information about what you need to think about if you have a diagnosis of diabetes and you're thinking about fasting. Okay. So if you have ever thought, should I be fasting to help my blood sugar? You're definitely not alone. Okay. Like I said, I get this question from clients, and fasting has become one of the most talked about strategies in health today. Okay. People are skipping breakfast, doing 16-hour fast, even going 4 days without eating, hoping to lose weight and lower their A1C and feel like they're in control of their body again. So, again, I'm not giving medical advice. I definitely am a person that believes in fasting for spiritual reasons, health reasons. There's so many different benefits. But today we're specifically looking at if you have a diagnosis of diabetes, because there's different things that you want to consider with someone that's whether you're living with pre-diabetes or diabetes. Okay. And I know that you hear these things and you're like, it can be feeling very, it can be very appealing to you. Because when your blood sugars feel unpredictable, when your weight isn't responding the way you used to, when you feel like you're doing everything right, which we talked about before, but you're still not seeing results, you start to look for something different that works. Okay. But here's the truth. Fasting, it's not magical, and it's not necessarily automatically harmful either. Okay. It is a tool. And like any tool, it can help or it can hurt depending on how it's used and who is using it. Okay. So today, I really want to focus on clear and honestly when you're fasting, what fasting actually looks like for your body, the potential benefits and the real risks, especially with a diagnosis of diabetes, and deeper questions that most people aren't asking themselves. Okay. So, first off, share the video, especially if you know someone that has a diagnosis of diabetes and considering fasting. Um, so just share this so everybody would know. Okay. Comment below. I'll come back and answer your questions so we can actually get the information that's needed. Okay. So what is fasting? Okay. So fasting just means going a period of time without eating. Okay. And we'll look at that in more of the health related aspects. Okay. So fasting can look different depending on the person. So it's not necessarily a set way that you have to fast, but there's different ways that people have been doing it. So some may they're not going to eat after a certain time, say 7 p.m., and then they're not going to eat again until the next morning, 9 a.m., something like that. Some may follow a certain schedule where they have a fasting window and an eating window, so they're not eating. A popular one is like not eating for 16 hours and then having an 8-hour eating window. Some people don't eat from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. And some people do longer fasts, like 24 hours or more. But what's important is that your body is not off during the fast. Okay. It's actually very active. So you have to remember that. So just because you're not eating does not mean your body is not working. And it goes from your body shifts from storing energy to using the stored energy. Okay. So we want to keep that in mind. So instead of constantly processing incoming foods, your body starts to use the stored glucose. It starts to tapping into those fat stores. That's why people find it very appealing. Like they want to get rid of that extra fat. And then it starts to adjust hormones like insulin. So fasting is not just about not eating. It's about changing your body's metabolic state. Okay. So, what are some of the potential benefits of fasting? Okay, and these are just a few, especially as it relates to a diagnosis of diabetes. Okay, it definitely can lower your insulin level. So, remember, insulin is not necessarily just what people inject into their bodies, insulin is in within everyone. Okay, insulin is a hormone that can be lowered during fasting. And when you're eating frequently, especially processed carbohydrates like those potato chips, your insulin level stays elevated because it's constantly trying to process those foods. So when you have a state of fasting, your insulin levels actually get to drop down. And when insulin comes down, the body becomes more open to burning fat and using that stored energy more efficiently. And again, this is why some people see improvement in their blood sugar patterns. Okay. And again, why it's so appealing. Again, because it moves from um, using the energy, your body moves from using the energy that you're eating to the stored energy, which that's the stored stuff we want to get rid of. And in previous videos, I talked about, how we go, why we store energy in certain ways. Okay. The second reason, not just in decreasing our insulin levels, but it improves our insulin sensitivity. And we have talked a lot on this channel about insulin resistance. Okay. And that is a big thing, especially for a diagnosis of diabetes or prediabetes, that insulin sensitivity is not there. So a benefit of fasting, it actually improves your insulin sensitivity. And over time, frequent eating, especially like high sugar or refined foods, can make the body less responsive to insulin. Okay. So fasting can help kind of like reset that sensitivity for you, meaning that the same amount of insulin does the work more efficiently. So when we talked about before insulin resistance of how like you have to use more and more insulin to actually break through. Okay, so we don't want that. So just think about it. So your body goes from like eating all day, like because we have like the grazers or something, where you're like, I'm just gonna have a little bit here and there. You're like, I don't eat much, and so I don't understand why I'm not losing weight. So I have, patients like that. I was like that myself, and I'm like, well, your body needs a break. It needs a time to where it is not constantly trying to digest the food, constantly trying to break down the food. And again, they're like, oh, I never thought about that way. I was just thinking about I'm not eating that many calories, but they're not really giving their body a chance to recover. Okay. So insulin sensitivity, decreasing your insulin levels, improving your insulin sensitivity, benefits of fasting. And then next would be, of course, weight loss support, which is why most of the time people are using it these days. Okay. So with fasting, so people naturally, they eat fewer calories when they have a short eating window. You would think. Okay. So this is where I really like to emphasize for people with the weight loss support and you're doing a fast. And I really work with clients on this too, that even during that eating window, you want to make sure you're eating healthful foods, not just anything. But usually, if you're eating within a certain period of time, it does force you to eat less calories. And it's not because necessarily you're forcing a restriction, but because you have less time to eat. Most of the time, again, it depends on the food choices that you pick. So that's something, I can go deeper in with a client to look at closer what they're eating if they choose to do a fasting period. But so how does it help with weight loss? It can improve your blood sugar. It can include your blood pressure and energy levels. So again, all these things people love to do, love the benefits of fasting. So decreases insulin resistance, so improves insulin sensitivity, decreases your insulin levels, helps with weight loss support. And then it reduces constant snacking, because most of the time when we're bored and we don't have anything to do, we're constantly eating, like mindlessly eating. And fasting often eliminates what I call like mindless eating windows. So late night snacking, like I said, the constant grazing, again, eating out of boredom, like I'm tired, I just want to sit here, watch TV, eat something while I'm sitting here watching TV. But this alone creates a powerful change because you're not snacking. And then again, that naturally reduces the amount of calories that you're eating because you have a shorter window. So if you look at the clock, say I'm eating from, I'll just use easy numbers, 12 to 8. At 12 o'clock, you'll eat something, but times that 8 o'clock hits, you're like, okay, I'm not going to eat that late. Or, 7 o'clock, depends on what you choose. And that really kind of helps. Again, it helps with mental clarity and structure. So some people feel more focused when they're not constantly thinking about food. Fasting can create like a simplicity, structure, and less decision fatigue, because you're not always thinking like, what am I going to eat? What am I going to eat? What am I going to eat? When am I going to eat? When am I going to eat? That type of thing. So it can be freeing. Okay. So again, people may love the benefits of fasting. Okay. And again, it's not right or wrong, but we just want you to understand the what you're getting into before you go completely into it. And then again, this is geared toward people that have a diagnosis of diabetes. Okay. So again, the benefits can lower your insulin levels. It improves your insulin sensitivity. It supports weight loss. It reduces the constant snacking, and it helps with mental clarity and structure. Okay. So now things I want you to think about, when you are some of the risks that are associated, because most time we're just looking at the benefits and we're like, yes, this is what I want. Okay. When we don't think about the risk, this is when people with diabetes can get into trouble. Okay. So fasting is often presented as universally helpful. Okay. But when diabetes is involved, there's a real concern that needs to be understood. And the first one definitely is your blood sugar can drop. Okay. And I don't know if you've ever experienced, even if you do not have a diagnosis of diabetes, experience a blood sugar drop. And unfortunately, I had this happen at one point in time in my life, and I didn't realize what it was, because this was a few years back. Usually like in the morning, I was going hiking and I was like trying to rush, and I didn't really eat. And I didn't eat during the hike because I was really trying to train for this trail run that I was coming up. And I was like, I remember, really working out, really going hard. And I was like, I was drinking my water, trying to stay hydrated, things like that, but I didn't eat. And so I got home, I was like all sweaty. I was like, let me take this shower first and then I'll eat. Oh my gosh. It was crazy. So it was like, I felt like I was going to black out, like things were just coming in on me. And I remember having to crawl out of the shower and grab a towel and try to crawl to the kitchen and just try to fast, like drink something that had some type of sugar in there. And I was like, oh my gosh, I never want this feeling again. But for someone that have a diagnosis of diabetes or pre-diabetes, are on medications that can cause a drop in blood sugar, because that's usually what most of the medications do. Not all of them. Most of the medications want to try to cause a drop in your blood sugar. Then you can have this severe drop during fasting times because you're taking your medicine. It's usually there to try to I'm trying to think the word, trying to offset the foods you're eating. And then you don't have the food, but you have the medicine, and your blood sugar starts to drop. Okay, so that's why, especially as a physician, when my patients or clients that have a diagnosis of diabetes starts to make changes, I really want them to discuss that with me, and so I can help them step by step to see like what's going on from here. Okay, so what would a drop in blood sugars look like? Like dizziness, shaking, feeling confused, very tired, and even like passing out. Like people have gone into what they call like a diabetic coma because their blood sugars drop. And it is something that you definitely want to let your family know if you're doing, so they can be on the lookout for that too for you. Okay. So also there can be times that your blood sugar spikes after fasting. Okay. So people are like, how in the world does that work? You just told me that my blood sugars would drop. So, but not eating for long periods of time can sometimes lead to higher blood sugars later because of that release of the glucose from the storage. Okay. So remember we said we moved from storing fat to storing energy to using stored energy. So your body is starting to release that stored energy, and then your blood sugars spike. Okay, especially like when it's releasing. So when you finally eat something, especially if it's like a large meal or high in carbohydrates, you'll see a sharp spike in your blood sugar. Okay, and this can be very discouraging for people, and also can be a stress on the body, because you don't want those spikes in the blood sugar. Okay, you don't want to go from steady state. You don't want to drop low and then go high, drop low and then go high. The body doesn't like that. It likes to stay in a steady state. Okay, so you want to be careful with that. Also, a risk would be hormonal stress response. So fasting is a form of stress for the body. Yes, it is. It can be a form of stress for the body. So your body may need to increase cortisol, and may need to increase adrenaline. And then again, in turn, it can raise your blood sugars. It can increase your cravings and disrupt your sleep. So again, I'll really focus on like, what are you eating during that eating window versus the fasting window? Because if you're fasting and your hormones are going up higher and you're starting to have those increased cravings, then you're not going to be eating healthful foods during your eating window, which in turn is not going to help you overall. Like, you will still probably see some weight loss, but you're not necessarily going to see a stabilizing your blood sugars and actually decreasing the inflammation overall in your body, because you're in a constant state of stress. And again, we talked about that in a different video. If your body's in a constant state of stress, it cannot relax to actually be able to recover. Okay, so stress and sleep already off. Fasting just amplifies this problem. And then we talked about in the videos a few weeks ago of how stress and sleep, when they're off, it can cause definitely lots of inflammation in the body, which we do not want. Okay. Another risk, like I was alluding to, could be overeating during your eating window. Okay. So when you fast too long, you may start to get hangry, and you just start to grab foods. Like, soon as that, let's say 12 o'clock hits, you're just like, oh, shoving food in your mouth, because you're like, what in the world is going on? Your body is in like shock. Like, what am I doing here? Why am I not getting the food I'm normally getting? So you just want to be very cautious of that. You may want to, drink some, warm water, something like that, to kind of like get your body ready to eat. And you have to remember, you don't want to have the larger portion size. You don't want to eat faster, because that's usually what happens when you feel very, very hungry. You get a large portion and you just start to eat like real fast. We don't want to do that. What can we do? Remember, we want to try to chew our food at least 22 times. We want to put our utensils down in between bites. Okay. We want to take breaths before eating, and before we eat, like each bite. Okay. So this can help to avoid that overeating during those eating windows, which we could definitely want to try to avoid. Okay. So again, I think I mentioned this before, like during those eating windows, you may eat foods that are less healthful. Okay. So we want to choose still healthful foods. We don't want to counteract what we were just trying to do with the fasting. Okay. And again, not addressing food quality. So fasting focuses on timing, but diabetes really heavily focuses on quality of food when we still have the meals. We don't want highly processed foods. We don't want foods that's low in fiber. We don't want foods that are high in sugar, because most times those are our snacky foods, and we just so hungry we want to grab them. So again, we don't want to just do timing alone with the fasting. We want to make sure that we create last and longing changes. So we want to actually eat healthful foods during our eating window. Okay. So what else do we want to be concerned or aware of? That energy and sustainability. So some people feel energized when fasting, but others can feel drained, irritable, and unfocused. And it's not about sustainability. It's not a long-term solution. So if you cannot fast, for long periods of time, not necessarily saying like 72 hours at a time, but if you don't make it like on a consistent basis, you may not see the benefits long term. And again, this is something that you really want to work with someone with the diagnosis of diabetes, to actually see how you can help it be a sustainable lifestyle change, if that's what you would want to do. Okay. So when you feel tired and irritable, you tend to eat foods that are not helpful. You don't sleep as well. And then nobody wants to be around someone that's like hangry all the time, right? You're like, you want to be around someone that's joyful. Okay. So what do we want to think about? Okay. So what I really want you to hear is fasting is not a foundation of metabolic health. It's a strategy, not a solution. Okay. Again, it's one tool in the toolbox. Okay. We have to use so many things that can actually help out. Because our body responds to consistency. Our body responds to consistency. So we want to think about the nutrient quality. We want to think of fiber intake. We always want to have high fiber foods because I talked about this before, where fiber helps stabilize our blood sugars a little bit better. So we want to eat foods that are high in fiber. We want to make sure we're still getting sleep. We want to still make sure that we're not causing too much stress. Again, extra stress, because our body, we're in a fasting state. We're already under stress. So we don't want to add outside stressors to that. And we don't want to forget about movement. Now, I'm not saying you want to go run a marathon when you have not eaten for, 24 hours, okay? But you still want to make sure you're moving your body, okay? So you can fast and still struggle, okay? And you can eat regularly and improve when the right conditions are in place. So the better question is not, should I fast? The better question is, what is creating stability in my body? Because stable blood sugars comes from consistent nourishment, balanced meals, reducing inflammation, and a nervous system that feels safe. Okay. Again, we want to make sure that stress stays down. Okay. So practical, again, this is not medical advice. Okay. So if you're someone that's thinking about fasting, here's a few things to reflect on. Okay. How does my body feel when I go longer without eating? So you want to make a note of that. So you can write down these questions before you think about fasting. How does my body feel when I go a long time without eating? Okay. Are you starting to feel shaky, or your blood sugar is dropping? What's going on? Do you feel dizzy, lightheaded? Do you feel hangry? What goes on? Okay. Do you feel calm and focused, or shaky and stressed? Ooh, excuse me. When you go without eating, okay? What happens when you break your fast? Are you someone that starts to overeat? Are you eating anything you can grab instead of like the healthful foods that can continue to nourish your body? And then the last question would be like, are you nourishing your body well during your eating window? Okay. So the 4 questions you want to think about: how does your body feel when you go longer without eating? Do you feel calm, focused, or do you feel shaky and stressed? What happens when you break your fast? Like, how do you feel then? And are you nourishing your body well during the eating window? Okay. So awareness matters more than like the trends of this fasting. So awareness matters. Okay. So because something works for one person doesn't automatically mean it works for another. So we want to be very mindful of what we're doing. We want to listen to our own body. And someone may be able to do the fasting. I'll talk about the intermittent fasting. Some may be able to go, 16, 18 hours, but maybe for you, you can only do 12. Okay. So it doesn't have to be like everyone else's. Okay. But again, you want to ask yourself those questions and see how you feel over time. And you may do, a section to where you try not to snack between meals and see how that does. If you have like, 4 or 5 hours without eating time frame, you may start slow. And again, with us here at Atkins Enlightenment Lifestyle Medicine, that's what we help people do, especially with the diagnosis of diabetes. We don't just say, go full force. Yeah, just go ahead and do it. You can do it. Now, this is more of the health side. So sometimes the people I work with, we're doing more spiritual things. And we talk through the spiritual aspect of how it can help with your body and the physical aspects. So again, I'm not telling you to fast. I'm not telling you not to fast. But as you are working with me as a client, as a patient, we can go deeper into what the meaning can be for you and how it can help you both with your spiritual aspect and your physical aspect. Okay. So Fasting, it can improve structure. It can reduce overeating. It can support metabolic changes, as we talked about, decreasing your insulin level, increasing that insulin sensitivity. But like anything in life, it is not a shortcut, okay? It is not something to approach without understanding your body and how you actually respond, okay? It's about healing and not extremeness. It's about alignment, okay? Alignment with the way your body responds, alignment with what your body needs, and alignment with what you can sustain long term, okay? Because we don't want to do things that are just going to be for a week, for a month, for 3 months. We want something that we can sustain over a lifetime. Because what happens is that if you do these things and they go in the extreme, you're like, okay, my blood sugars are better. I don't need medication anymore. And you do well for a while. And then you like start to slip back into your old habits. Oh, I'm not going to fast anymore. I just want to eat. I'm going on vacation. And then your body starts to, and that level starts to go up again. That insulin sensitivity decreases. Your body starts to have the inflammation again, and you'll end up back in the same state. And that's how people do that, like yo-yoing and cycling of their health. And I want you to actually have the fasting as a tool. If you choose to use that, so you know when to go in and out. There may be seasons that you're not going to fast for your medical or physical body, but and then you're like, okay, this period of time, I know I'm not going to be able to do that because I'm going on vacation, and you're not going to be able to judge. Maybe that's what you want to do. Again, with Atkins Enlightenment Lifestyle Medicine, we can help you work through that and see how we can make it last longer. Okay. So just be aware of what's going on in your body. We want to actually help you to be able to sustain your health and wellness over a lifetime. Okay. So imagine this, that you wake up not wondering, should I eat or not eat? We don't want that question, right? Instead, we want to say, my body feels steady. My energy level is consistent. My blood sugars are not controlling me all day. I'm not wondering where they're going, spiking up, spiking down. It's the kind of stability that comes not from guessing. It comes from understanding. And that's what this channel is about, to actually help you understand your own body so you can make the best choices for your health, okay? So if you're tired of trying different strategies and not seeing consistent results, if your blood sugars feel unpredictable, here we go again. If your weight and energy cravings don't match the effort you're putting in, there is a reason. And that's not because you're failing. Again, you're not failing. And it's because your plan hasn't aligned with your biology, your physiology. And again, we talked about that before. So you can look at my other videos, like, share, respond. Okay. So again, inside Atkins Enlightenment Lifestyle Medicine, my practice, we take a deeper approach. We look at your patterns, we look at your metabolism, we look at your nutrition, your lifestyle, so you can finally understand what your body actually needs to heal, okay? So if you're ready to take that next step, to have that clarity and that support, my website is www.dramandamd.com. You can book your appointments. We're 100% virtual, and we can actually help you out, okay? So I hope this message actually gave you something to think about if you have a diagnosis of diabetes or know someone with diabetes and thinking about fasting. So share this with someone that needs to hear it, because the right information at the right time can change everything for you, okay? So blessing health, y'all. Have a great Friday and weekend, and we'll be back next week. Bye-bye.